Folks, today we'll learn to write the polyfill for each method in JavaScript. So without any delay, let's get started. Before getting started, let us understand what a polyfill is. Polyfill is basically a piece of JavaScript code that is used to fill in some functionality that is being provided by a browser but might not be supported by some other browser. And let me just reiterate what I just said. Polyfill is just a piece of JavaScript code that is being used to fill in some functionality that is being supported by a browser but might not be supported by some other browser. Now let's take a imaginary scenario. Let's say you write your code, and in your code you use the forEach method. Now your code has to run on multiple browsers, and let's say Internet Explorer does not provide support for the forEach method. So your code will run on Mozilla, your code will run on Chrome, but it won't execute on Internet Explorer. Hence, to tackle this situation, what we do is we'll write some code to provide the similar functionality as forEach for Internet Explorer. So what will happen is, in case of Mozilla or Chrome, our actual forEach will run, that is being provided by JavaScript, and in case of Internet Explorer, the piece of code that we wrote will execute. Okay. So yeah, this is what forEach is. This is what polyfill is. So let's write polyfill for forEach. And why I am making video on the polyfill for forEach, because this polyfill for forEach is being frequently asked in interviews. So yeah, let's get started. So let me just take an array. Let's name it num arr, and we'll have some numbers here, some random numbers here. Okay, and let me show you something. Okay, so you can see in console we have our array, and here you can see we also have this prototype. But what this prototype contains? This prototype contains all the methods that are being applied to this array, that is map, filter, reduce, etc., and also forEach. You can see forEach here. Since forEach is present here, we are able to use forEach. Okay, so let me just illustrate what I just said. So let us just use forEach, and I will show you that we are able to use forEach. But when I remove this forEach from this prototype, array prototype, we won't be able to use this forEach. Let me just show you this thing. So what I'll do is num array forEach, let's just remove this console. Okay, forEach, and here I will say num, and I'll just simply console log the num. That's it. That's all I wanted to do. Okay, you can see all the numbers are being consoled. That is, all the items in the array are being consoled. Now, why is it so? Because the forEach functionality is being provided by the arrays prototype. Now let's make this forEach method inside the arrays prototype null. So how we do that? We'll say array dot prototype dot forEach, because we have the forEach inside the arrays prototype, and let's make it null. Okay, now let's see if this code works or not. Okay, so okay, let's see we are getting error. And what error it is? It says num arr dot forEach is not a function. Why is it so? Let me tell you why is it so. Now if I console log this num arr, okay, so yeah, so let me just comment line number 5. And now since I made this forEach null here, and now I am consoling num arr, you can see in the prototype, where is forEach? See, forEach is null, hence we won't be able to use forEach. Okay, so yeah, So this is why I did this, to simulate the scenario where we do not have access to for each, or the for each functionality is being not supported by a particular browser. Okay, so let's write the polyfill. So what we'll do is, we'll say if array dot prototype dot for each, then do something. If it's null, then this thing will be false, because null is false. But if I do this, then this is true. Okay, this is true. So what will happen is, I'll say do something. So what will actually happen is, in case of Mozilla and Chrome, our code will run, whatever the code is will run. But in case of Internet Explorer, it will see, okay, so this is null, hence I have to do something. What I have to do? Whatever the code that is being written in the if block, I have to execute that thing, since for each is null. Okay, so what we'll actually do is, now we'll say if for each is null, provide another for each, let's name it my for each. Let's name it my for each, and we'll write a function. And what the for each method takes as input, it takes the callback function as input. The callback functions might double a number, might triple a number, or it might do some other thing, but the crux of the matter is the for each function takes a callback function. So here we will take a callback function. We'll say callback. Okay, I name it callback itself. Now it's easy. What for each does? Think what for each does. In for each, what actually happens is, we have to iterate over the array, and each element of the array passes through the callback function. Let me reiterate what happens in for each. The for each method iterates over each element of the array, and each element of the array passes through the callback function provided by the user or developer. So for that, we'll use the for loop. You can use simple for loop. I'm using for of here, and I'll say let item of, I have to say this. Why this? Because this will actually refer to the array, because you see array dot prototype is actually a object. But the point is, I don't want to get deep into this. I have made a video series explaining how this works, so you can just go ahead and watch that. But for now, let's complete this video, and you can just write this code and show this code to the recruiter. That's it. And yes, you have to understand how this works, but to understand that, just watch that video series that I made. So yeah, so here understand this. For now, understand this, that this will refer to the array that is being provided by the user. So now what I will do is, it's easy. I just have to do this callback, and what actually happens is, I have to provide the item here, because the item is each item of the array is being passed through the callback function. Okay. Now let's say if my for each works or not. Since for each is null, we said okay, if for each is null, then do this, activate my for each. Okay, so what we did is, we said okay, we first made for each null to simulate the similar situation when the support is being not provided by the browser, and then we said okay, if for each is null, if let's say support is being not provided, you don't have to write this. I wrote this line, the line number 3, just to make you understand or simulate the situation when the support for each is not being provided by the browser. So okay, so here we are saying okay, when for each is null, do this, add this my for each method inside the prototype. And what this my for each does is, whatever the callback function is being provided, it will pass each item of the array through the callback function. Okay, so let's test it out if it's working or not. So I'll say num arr dot my for each, and here I'll say, instead of I'll say okay num and just console log the num. Let's see if it's working. See, it's working now. So yeah, instead of console logging num, I can do anything. I can just console log num into 3 and you can see it's working fine. Okay, so instead of for each, instead of my for each, you can also simply write for each here, because for each functionality is being not provided, you are providing the for each functionality itself. So like it's up to you. See, it's working. Yeah, so yeah, this is how we write polyfill for each method, and you will find this code in the description, and also find the not the code but the link to code in the description. So yeah, go ahead and check this out. And since this is a new channel, I'll really appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel and give a thumbs up or maybe comment something down if you like this video, because this will help me go up into the YouTube algorithm. So yeah, that's it from my side. Thanks for watching.